Thank you for joining True Print for Life. I'm your host, Christina Vera.
And I'm your co-host, Maylin Sambois. And as always, here at True Print for Life, we're super excited to bring you some of the best people that we know. They're experts in their fields and also really just all around amazing people. So today is one of those days. We have a great guest, someone that I have the opportunity to work with personally in my health journey. Her name is Fatima.
Yes.
Bouyer?
Yes.
Yes. So let me tell you a little bit. Welcome, Fatima. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So excited to have you. I'm going to share with everyone here just a little bit about her. She has an incredible bio, so I'm going to shorten that up. And then you'll get the pleasure to get to know her through our podcast and also through following her on her social media. So she is a serial entrepreneur with over 20 years of experience working alongside of the executive team in a wide range of industries, including hospitality, Mimi's Cafe, and Bob Evans Farms, real estate management, national church residences, and retailing wholesale distribution L brands. She is passionate about detail when it comes to anything she does, creativity, purpose and innovation driven, all of her work. She's positive. She has an amazing attitude, tireless energy. I can say that. She's a powerful force. She influences others and works really hard and succeeds. Fatima is inspired daily by her husband and her mom, and her free time, which I don't know what that is. She likes to read, skate, and work out. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
We are so Maylin and I, we're also entrepreneurs,
okay.
But I think
serial.
Yes.
And
I also say social entrepreneurs because we're also we're very intentional about what we do in business. Mm-hmm. It's just, I think there's a need for distinction because sometimes people are like, oh, I got all these businesses and they're doing all these different things, right. But there's no real connection to why you have all those businesses.
Right.
But when I meet entrepreneurs like yourself and I hear kind of some of the work that you're doing, I know there was a very intentional process. And just, so Fatima, if you can walk us through just a little bit about just, what really inspired you to even want to go into that entrepreneurial realm?
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you just identifying with the distinction between just doing a whole bunch of things versus doing things that are maybe purposeful. Mm-hmm. So my inspiration came from personal passion, honestly. And every business that I do operate is something that I would consider a vessel for myself. Mm-hmm. I started my journey based on my career as an executive assistant. And I just wanted to personally make an impact, leave a legacy. And I'm like, how do I do this in this role as an assistant? And I was like, well, I can start my own virtual assistant business. And this was pre-COVID.
Wow.
And so I started operating in that space for about 2 years as I was doing executive assistant work at L Brands, which was my last corporate role. Mm-hmm. And I saw that it was a viable need where my focus was small businesses and entrepreneurs. Have no other connection to entrepreneurs other than the fact I'm like, well, they're alone. They probably can use the help the most. And it felt like an easy entryway into what I wanted to do in terms of working for myself.
Got it.
And so that was happening for about 2 years. Mm-hmm. And I decided, you know what? Shit or get off the pot, because I was doing both. Mm-hmm. And when you talk about being busy and managing schedules, and I had also become a full-time mom. So my husband has 2 daughters.
Okay.
And the youngest wanted to move in with her dad in 9th grade. So I'm like, all right, I have multiple roles now outside of just being a wife or just being a woman, a sister, a daughter, and all those other titles. Mm-hmm. Now I have to show up as an example of a mom. And I felt like I needed more presence. Mm-hmm. So I decided to just give it an opportunity, see how it went. And I never looked back. Now, the 2 years I did both before our daughter moved in, and it was working 9 to 5, working 5 to 9. Yeah. But I saw that the clients really did use the service and they were paying me. And I'm like, I just got another check. And so that is where the light bulb really started to click. And so from there, it was just writing out a plan. Okay, what do I need to do and how much do I need to charge to truly walk away from my job? Mm-hmm. That took about a year to figure out.
Okay.
It was still very nerve-wracking to resign, but L Brands, very supportive. My executive team, very supportive. They knew about my company, which my original venture was Office Badass, and I still have Office Badass. Mm-hmm. And so it was like I do little events and I share different things with my team. The support was always there. Then when I resigned, they were like, well, we knew it was coming. We just didn't know what it would be now.
Right.
So that's pretty much how I would say I got started. It was just literally like a gut personal passion, interest, and just making an impact, leaving a legacy, and just doing something for myself.
Yeah. Can you share with us kind of, you mentioned like just, that planning process of saying, no, like I'm really going to go all in. Where did you start with that? Like, so what's your almost like an exit strategy in terms of saying like, I'm going to do this. And so can you walk us through a little bit?
Did you pick a date?
Yeah. Like what did that look like
So
for you?
I am very much type A, straight up and down. I'm going to write a schedule. I'm going to put it on my calendar. I'm going to find it. And that is just the way that I have found like much success is just following a plan, and also having a plan you can pivot because you have something to go back to, or you have something that you're reaching for.
Yeah.
And so I made a nice salary at L Brand. So part of it was like, well, I don't want to make less money. So I needed to really figure out, okay, what was realistic to charge, doing research on what different expenses would be for running a business. Starting a virtual assistant business has almost zero overhead. You need a laptop and Wi-Fi.
Right.
Good. So that felt really good because I wasn't entering a space where I needed to have like a building, a this, or that, and not very much personnel either. It was me. So from an expense standpoint, I felt like that was mitigated. But from an like income standpoint, it was literally, okay, let me dissect my background and what I feel my worth is. And that's something that I would say I've always identified with. I'm also a little bit older. I'm 45. So I started my entrepreneur journey later in life. So at that point, you've already sort of evaluated like who you are as a person.
Yeah.
And you've kind of understand like what your non-negotiables are, where sometimes, and this is me even in my own life, when I was in my 20s and 30s, you're still figuring that out. So sometimes you're afraid to say your number. And so a part of that for me was not being afraid to determine what my number is. And that's just formulas, right? It's like, okay, if I want to make 50,000 this year, let me back that up. In 12 months, like I need to make this much per month. Okay, let me back that up again. I need to make this much per week, and literally just keep backing it up to like, okay, this is my hourly wage. And then you got to sit with that and be comfortable with it too, because it is uncomfortable to tell people your price, but you also got to know who your audience is.
Right.
So everybody's not going to be like, maybe your neighbor or your cousin or your best friend is not your client because they don't want to pay your price, but the client is out there. So it was a lot of, I would say, understanding myself, knowing my worth and my value, and then not being afraid to ask for it.
I love that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's one of the exit strategies for those that are working right now, trying to figure out how to do it, and what they should start thinking first. I think you gave a really good roadmap to that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You have one business, you mentioned that, and then you have two more.
I do.
Tell us a little bit about the other two and how those came about.
Sure. So I think that's where the sort of serial entrepreneur in me came out that I did not know existed. Because in my mind, I'm like, all right, I'm going to do Office Badass. This is it. I'm going to focus. And it'll take for you to really like meet my husband, because he's like, I always say, okay, I'm going to do this one thing and I'm just going to stop. Like, this will be it. And then I do something else. So I'm like, well, at this point, this is just who I am. I do a lot of things. Working out, I started working out when I was like in my early 30s, about to get married, the whole thing. Right. And so I ended up falling in love with it and learning more about it from a strength training perspective. And I loved how it made me feel. I was like, oh, I'm in the gym, I'm lifting weights. Like, I really felt like a badass. And so in that, being an entrepreneur, and now I'm out on my own and I'm making my own money, it was just another revenue stream. And I started posting about my journey. Just some of it was like an accountability thing. So I started this page, Gym Badass. It was like, I already had Office Badass. So you know what? I might as well be a Gym Badass.
Part, right?
Yes. And it was seriously like just me putting myself out there and just kind of sharing some aspects of my journey. And then people would hit me up like, they wanted to work out with me. And I'm like, well, you can work out with me, but I can't charge you because I'm not a trainer. I said that so many times. And I was like, well, wait a minute. How much do trainers make? And at that point, it just became another revenue stream. And so I got my certification through ACE, and then I started training people. And that just is literally how that, I would say, organically happened. And now it's like the majority of my time. I actually fell in love with that more so than the office stuff. But I had been doing office work for over 20 years. So I felt like I just maybe reached the end of the road. And then as far as badass mobile bartending, which is my mobile bartending business.
That's news to me.
Yes.
Got it. All right.
That is before I was engaged and married, like all through my 20s, bartended on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Like I never touched my bank account because I just made money bartending. And it was fun, like very personable, like always had a good time behind the bar, socializing with people. And that was just a hobby.
I love that.
But again, when you think about, okay, I'm making my own money right now, it was just another revenue stream. So that business, I never fully operated in. I have contractors who go out and like work the gigs, but I do manage the back end, like contracts and conversations. And I'm just helping people build out like what their menu looks like for the events.
Okay.
But yeah, so everything just happened kind of like, and it birthed in a sequence. I did Office Badass on its own for about 2.5 years. Not counting the 2 when I was still at L Brands, but just fully like, this is it.
Right.
Whatever I bring in, I got to be able to pay my car note, my half of the mortgage. Like, this is it. And then I started the fitness. And then the Badass Mobile Bartender was literally like the newest one. It's about maybe 2 years old.
Okay.
Yep. And it's been doing really good.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what I love is like going back to how we started, it's like all of these things make sense for who you are. You know, and you know, these are things that you're connected to, that you enjoy, and are just part of what makes sense. If you're going to do them, you can make a living.
Right.
And I think oftentimes people complicate the ones that feel like they have this desire to do something else, because not everybody has to do something else.
Right.
I think social media has confused a lot of people.
Thank you.
And making them, because my husband, let me tell you, my husband, he ain't trying to do nothing else.
Right. He
He
sounds like my husband. He said 2 jobs is for 2 people.
Yeah, he's like, and sometimes I used to get mad, like, and I still do on occasion, because I'll come home and he's like chilling or outside. I'm like, wow, you got a lot of free time on your hands.
Yes.
And he's like, no, I went to work today. I put in my 9-10 hours.
Yes.
Like, I'm chilling. And I remember like we got into this huge like conversation. Well, it's more of a debate / argument a couple years ago, because I had said something to the effect of like, you know, like with all this free time you have in the evenings, like you could be, you know, you could have a whole different hustle, like a whole nother. And he was like, that's not my life. Right. He's like, he's like, that's what you like to do.
Yep.
I don't feel the need to do 20,000 things. And I was low key offended.
Yes, that definitely hurts.
That hurts. What hurts?
Different things. I said, well, is that how you see me?
Yes.
And he was like, no, I'm just saying, like, because my family is very big on entrepreneurship. Like my sisters, my mom, everybody got a hustle.
Yep.
And he's like, I just don't feel like I need that. And I had to have a second. I was like, if he was like me, who would be watching these kids? No, I'm joking.
Who be cooking? Like this? Who be cooking?
Who's gonna hold the health insurance? Like, I mean, there's because you have to understand and appreciate every position someone plays.
Yes.
And not everybody, you know, and I think it's important that we start to shift this narrative of making people feel like they're not doing enough.
You're right.
Because there's a difference there's folks that you simply are just not doing anything. So I'm not
nothing.
Like, if you got somebody in your house ain't paying no bills, ain't working at all.
Like,
that's not what I'm talking about.
This is not who we're talking about.
That's not who I'm talking about. But if somebody's genuinely happy clocking in at 8:30, they come home at 5, they close their laptop, they in the garage like my husband, you have to be okay with that.
You have to be okay with that.
And we all have a role to play, because if the world suddenly everybody wanted to be entrepreneurs,
then what?
Who's gonna serve?
Who's gonna
Seriously.
like? No, I mean it's true, because I think, and we're having labor shortages right now across the country. Because honestly, I feel like, there's a lot of work culture issues that I think do drive people into saying, I could do this on my own. Right. But not everybody can be an entrepreneur. Right. And we have to be very clear and careful with how we present this lifestyle.
Yes.
Like, I gotta make my own money.
Yes.
I do my own schedule, but you struggle.
But
you know, like some days we didn't know how we was gonna pay anything.
Yes.
You know, so to that, I think it's important that people really sit with the why. Why do you want to do this? Is it necessary for you to do this? And if you decide to do it, great, but be honest with folks about the journey and the process, because oftentimes it's so glamorized. Like, we drink lattes all day, we doing all this. Like, I just got here and already, like, I changed my shoes because we had all this stuff right by the back door, and I'm taking all that stuff and I got a suit on, you know, because it's constantly, you're going to be doing 20,000 things as an entrepreneur until you get to a point where you create the structure and the leverage, but it's a different type of lifestyle. And it's not for everybody.
It's really not. And I can appreciate a couple of things that you just shared. One being like, respect people for what they choose for their life and don't impose your life on them. So I have similar conversations in my household. But the one thing that I have been able to do is, you know what? He's not an entrepreneur. And guess what? I don't put it on him.
Yeah.
If I'm at my studio and I need to do so, I ended up getting a different vehicle. I had my dream car, 2-door Benz coupe, sunroof.
Oh, wow.
But I literally couldn't keep it because I cannot depend on him to come to that studio and move stuff, get this. Nothing can fit in the back of that car.
Right.
And so it was like, okay, I chose this. He didn't. I have to live with that. I have to adjust some things. So I got an SUV. I still am in the Benz family. That's just my own personal desire.
Yeah.
However, I wanted my coupe and I cannot afford both. So I had to come up out of that. But also just to the extent of I try not to put my pressures on him. Yes, he's a listening ear. He's a VP at his organization, so he can think strategy at high level. So we can definitely dialogue there. But when it comes to like the hustle and bustle of what I need to go through, and you talk about moving stuff in suit, it's times where I'm like, okay, somebody's coming. Let me switch my shoes and I'm in the bathroom just changing roles. That's not for everybody.
Right.
And I'm cautioned to, if you are not passionate about it, please don't do it, because sometimes the money don't match the hustle.
Oh,
sometimes the money don't match the drive. And so your heart has to be in what you're doing. And if you're doing it for money, you know, and it's not there, you're not going to enjoy it as much as just get a 9 to 5.
Absolutely.
Social media, that's the other point I cannot stand. I get a lot of conversion from social media, but it's the glamorization that I don't like.
Yeah.
And so whenever I talk about like my entrepreneurship journey, I'm very clear. It's like I was purposeful. I planned. I'm never going to tell nobody, oh, just quit your job and go for it. Because it's not that easy.
Right.
It's not that easy. There's fear involved, you know, with, okay, how is this going to work? But if you have a plan and a playbook, it's a little less fear. The fear is always going to be there because you just don't know. That's the unknown. We don't operate in that space, right?
Yeah.
We surpass that. However, if you have a plan and you have something to visit and you have something that you can walk and talk and do, a program to follow, if it works, great. If it doesn't, now you have some leverage, some history, something to go off of to say, okay, I did all of these things. It didn't work. I still want to try this. Let me try these other things. So that's kind of like my gripe with social media too. It's like, they definitely try to stage it up and it's like, no, I'm pulling my hair out and I got this laptop and this phone and I actually don't want to talk to nobody, but I got to do what what God has serviced me to do, what purposed me to do. And so, yeah. I can go on about that because I want to wring folks' neck when they're like, it's not that easy.
Just quit your job. I was like, who's going to pay the rent? Yeah. The rent is coming May 1st. Who's going to pay that?
Yes.
Did you have rent money saved for at least 6 months?
Please save some money.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because it's also a discipline, right? Like, I think that's going back to your point earlier, it's just, I have felt in this journey of entrepreneurship that we've been on for so many years, it really, there's a lot of things about yourself that you learn and you grow in the process. But I do believe there's certain like initial fundamentals that you have to have. And I think that discipline piece of it, because it's not always going to be attractive. It's not always going to be fun and exciting. There's a lot of hardship. And whether you're working for somebody or you're working for yourself, there is hardships in all of that.
Correct.
But there has to be a clear, driven, kind of where I like, regardless what happens, I'm rooted in figuring it out. I'm rooted in asking for help when I need help, or I'm rooted in, being able to say like, what, maybe this is not for me.
Right.
Because I think we have a lot of people sitting in positions right now, whether you work for yourself or you are in a corporation or a part of a team, that you followed the dollars. You followed, the pizzazz of what you thought this job or this company was going to do for you. And you're really miserable and you're making people around you miserable. And it's affecting the work, whatever the work is. So I think we are at a point, and I think that this culture of just, where what do I want to do? What do I want to be known for? But not from a place of self-gratification, but it's like, what is your impact? Right. And what do you need to be able to have that impact? Because I think to your point, I think the older you get, the more wise you just simply get, because you've gone through so much. It's like when we go through certain things now, I'm like, listen, my childhood done prepared me for some things. My early 20s done prepared. Motherhood has prepared me for things. So when you get to a certain point and things happen, moment, you're just not as phased.
Right.
Because it's like, if I've gone through all of that, I just simply now, God willing, I can see some of the signs in advance. So I'm like, I'm not even going to that event, or I'm not even going to entertain where this conversation is going.
Yes.
Because to your point earlier, like once you start to, be very comfortable in understanding who you are and what you bring and how you contribute to your company or other companies or relationships, there's just a certain tolerance that you're just like, I'm not dealing with it, and I'm okay with that.
Yes.
So that security. So I would love to hear kind of was there a definitive moment, or like you said, I had to really understand my value. And that is self-work. Like, I mean, even as great as everybody is, like you don't just wake up one day and be like, I'm worthy, I'm enough.
Right.
Like that takes a lot of work, even when you have it, to maintain that understanding. So can you share with us a little bit like what that process was like for you?
Absolutely. So I definitely pour into myself a lot. My gym is called a wellness studio and not a gym, because I feel like the fitness journey or any type of transformation that we're making for self starts within. Right. And so I sit with myself a lot. I meditate. I started doing that when I was about 36.
Okay.
And in that, it was just really processing how things made me feel, how they didn't make me feel, and how I wanted to feel. And so I am very like in tune with my surroundings, who I allow in certain spaces with me, because I do want to feel good. If something doesn't make me feel good, then I make a choice to be okay with this doesn't work for me. So I never really fell victim to peer pressure. I will say one of the things that probably developed a little bit of tougher skin in me was like growing up dark skin. And this is a whole nother conversation and dialogue, but it just caused me to sort of like toughen up, because people would like pick on you and do all of these different things. And for me, my defense mechanism was to just it didn't faze me. There's some good that came out of that. There's some not so good that came out of that. So as I got older and realizing like some of the impacts of that, even just reading other literature about darker skinned, people, not just women, I decided that it was best for me to just really process for myself, like how I wanted to be, how I wanted to show up, how I wanted to feel, what made sense to me. And so I do a lot of self-work. I read a lot of self-help books. I don't watch TV. So if you ask me about any show or make any reference, I'm probably not going to know. Like I watch very little TV because I love my quiet time. I love my moments. Sundays, I'm probably not going to respond to very many people.
Yeah.
Because that's my day where, okay, I'm going to go to church. I'm going to get some good, words to focus on for the week. And then I'm just going to process. I'm going to understand and reflect like, okay, how did the week go? How did I want to show up? Did I show up that way? Is there somebody I need to apologize to? Because I'm not perfect.
Right.
So I do a lot of like, I would say introspective work. And that started for me probably at like 36. And I can't think of anything significant that happened other than just growing up.
Yeah.
So I would say in my 30s, I was kind of like go with the flow. And I think one thing, if I really try to think of something, it was like I'm very extroverted and I love people. And there was a point I can remember where I was like, I'm having fun, but I feel like I didn't feel as fulfilled. I was not taking any time for myself. And so I had a girlfriend who had started meditating, and she was older than me. She's about 10 years my senior. And she was just telling me about it. And I'm like, okay, let me do some research. And as I started researching it, my spirit started to settle a little bit. And I was like, it was a little uncomfortable at first. I'm like, okay, I'm just sitting here. This is kind of like weird. But then I started listening to music that makes me mellow. And if you notice in the gym, I usually cool us down with like some form of meditation. Sometimes we'll stretch. And then sometimes I'm like, this session was really tough. I just want to lay here. Like my spirit will take over and I'll feel like we just need to rest or just relax or just have a moment where like for these 5 minutes, don't think about anything. Listen to the words. So meditation, music, and or poetry or lyrics really started to help me like feel the other side of myself, if you will. And I just started to appreciate it. And the journey, the more I journey in life, I appreciate it even more. We went to Mexico 2 weeks ago. It was the most restful trip I have taken probably in a very long time. We did nothing. We woke up, we went to the gym, we went to breakfast. That was the end.
I love that.
I read a book and, and I just kind of browsed through it as I wanted to. I laid by the pool, laid on the beach. That was it. And there was a time when I would go on vacation and that would not be enough. I had a full schedule and we needed to see everything, everywhere. Now I just am like, you know what? I want peace. I have a very busy life. I just want some peace. So I think that just understanding that about myself and just getting a little bit older, I just felt like this was the other side of things. And it's balanced me out. I feel good.
I love that. And I love that you have such I wrote book trip to Mexico ASAP.
Well, we love
I like that book trip. Okay.
I said, I need to read me a book on the beach somewhere on my daggone self.
It's restorative.
Yes. And I love that you put such because I think there's this misconception, and I think it's really the cosmetic companies and all these marketing companies who make you feel like getting older is a bad thing. Oh. And it's just like, I hear you say it in such a way that I'm like, man, what, God willing, when because there's a freedom, there's a wisdom, if you're intentionally leaning into kind of what you're describing. I feel like that is part of what life is all about, is being able to have real true appreciation for the journey. And we were talking about this on a call yesterday, where I feel like a lot of people are just so fixated on the destination. It's like, I just got to get there. I got to get this money. I want to be in a certain house. I just want a certain life. It's this whole in between that we just are completely missing.
Yes.
Or trying to skip. And not appreciating or learning from, or just facing what it is.
Right.
And so I really appreciate just how you've described your journey in that, because I feel that that's where a lot of us, I say me, because I constantly am in this space of just being but I still haven't hit this, and this.
What's next?
Or what's next? Because we're constantly on what's next, what's next. And it's just but Tina, look what you're doing right now.
Right.
Look what you just did.
Reflection has been very powerful in my life, because we do have a tendency, and even if it's just based on what we're exposed to do more, or to want more, or to strive for more. But it's what have I done? Let me go back and really tally up what I've done and be proud of myself for a while, not just for a minute. And that is fulfilling. And sometimes you're I can take a break real quick. I don't have to do anything right now.
Right.
I think we all have goals and aspirations, and I love being motivated, but I'm not rushed. Right? I'm not rushed to be at the next thing. Let me be right here for a minute.
Right.
Because I've done all of these things. And yes, there's more to do, in whatever capacity, but I don't have to hurry up and do it.
Right.
And I also I would say, being an entrepreneur, my faith growth has been enormous. And so I just try to wait to hear and receive from God and the Holy Spirit. And I love that I'm at a place now where I can hear that. I can receive that. I can pray. And like you said, sometimes you're nope, I don't need to go to that event.
Right.
Or nope, I don't need to interact with this, that, and that. But then there are times where God is show up.
Yep.
Touch that person. Go talk to that person. So I love that I'm getting a lot more clear with that. I know there's always room for growth, but I accept where I was and where I am today. So
I love that. I feel like we can talk to you forever.
I know. It's definitely.
We have other, you have to come back because I have other questions.
Okay.
But one thing, because a lot of people that are listening are somewhere in their journey, right? And we always like to ask our guests to give, if you look back at your younger self, what advice would you give your younger self?
I would say, know how to negotiate. Don't be afraid to negotiate, and don't be afraid to be assertive, and sometimes people hear assertive and they're oh my God, assertive is not a bad word.
Right.
I'm saying stand up for yourself. Know what your values are, know what your non-negotiables are, because there was a time when I just kind of let stuff fly, or I didn't have the same, this is my boss, I can't approach certain things or say certain things, or let me just do, instead of having an idea or having a thought. Because now being in leadership and being, a CEO and having contractors, it's they might think of something that I didn't think of. And so now if I'm this person that's okay with sharing and speaking up in a space, I might give them an idea that's going to, propel something in their life. So I would say being assertive, and then also knowing how to negotiate. Because there are times when you're which I think people are getting a lot better with that nowadays. So,
some people need to slow down.
Listen, and I said, let me enter that conversation with caution. But when I think about my younger self, that was something that I felt like I could have done better in certain scenarios. So that's just more so personal to me. But again, like this era we're in now, I'm like, people are like, you ain't paying this, you ain't doing that. And you're like, show me your credentials again. Let me see your portfolio.
Listen,
so.
I feel you on that. It's just so weird how these generations have like shifted in so many ways.
So many ways.
I agree. Sometimes, and I'm never going to argue with anybody about what they feel they're worth, right?
Yes.
Like,
no,
respectfully, that's what you think you work. To your point, I'm just not your client.
Right.
And I'm okay with that.
Right.
I've learned to be okay with that. But I think it's just this, the shift of just, and like I said, I think it's a combination of so many things because the entrepreneurial, whether you're in the beauty industry, you own a catering company, photography, I mean, whatever your craft is, like, I think it's important that, once you own and you really out here with like, this is my price, but there needs to be an evaluation of the value, right? Like if I really feel like, you are the only person that can give me this type of quality for this particular price. If I really want it, I'm going to figure it out, just like anybody else.
Yep.
But then if I make the investment or, and then I get some mediocre chip chop kind of like, then it's just like this, there has to be integrity.
Right.
There has to be integrity in business, whether it be entrepreneurial business or just what you do for someone else for a living, like the integrity piece of it. I'm kind of a little skeptical on some of the stuff I'm seeing lately.
I'm going to do a little bit of homework. Can I get some referrals? Let me see your past work, those type of things. You start to learn how to ask the right questions.
Right.
Yeah. Because when you spend your hard-earned money.
Absolutely.
It's like.
I mean, we've had situations.
We've had disappointments.
Disappointments. And that was years ago because now I think we're both in the same frame of mind. Like we know kind of what the ingredients should look like for certain things.
Right.
And that comes with trial and error sometimes. But I just think it's important that, and that's why Maylin and I are so, we're very intentional about like our brand, what we do, what it should look like, and the people we want to also be a part of that.
Yes.
So I know as you talked about like with your, even your other companies, it's like you have to hire people and you have to trust that people are going to roll out
and represent.
Exactly.
Yes.
And I think that's something that a lot of folks really don't quite understand what that entails and, how hard you work for something. Yes. And it's not that we want to, keep everything to ourselves, but, you work hard and you want to protect it. You want to protect it.
It's true. And that just brings me to a point of like about personal brand, and that's an asset, if you will. And so when you have other people connected to your brand, it's like interview them and monitor them, give them coaching along the way because they now represent what you stand for.
Right.
And so if it doesn't match, then maybe it's not a good fit for both because I'm not telling you how to live or what to do. But if it doesn't fit the brand image of what this company stands for or how I represent this company, then it's just a mismatch. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's okay. And sometimes I think people are like, when it's a mismatch, it's a bad thing. No, it's not. It's okay. It just didn't work.
It just didn't work.
I'm going to find my person and you're going to find your company. And that's okay. So, but personal brand is just a huge asset. And I think that's something that I really pride myself on. It's just how I show up, and showing up consistently that way. So
I think we need a whole episode on personal brand.
Yes, we do.
But we'll talk about that. We're going to talk. That's another time.
Okay.
We definitely enjoy our conversation with you.
This was good.
I mean, you are awesome. I just got to know her too.
I was wondering. I was like, because you said gym. I was like, what's going on here?
So you going
outside this summer? I said, wow, Maylin trying to be outside this summer.
Yes, she's definitely gonna be outside. I got her.
And I found you, but you talk about brand. It was on Instagram. I saw some of the people that I know that have worked out with you, and I said, well, I'm just gonna see what's going on here. Just test it out because I just had a baby and Lord, everything is different. So we're just I'm with Jesus and you. So we'll see what happens. So we'll have some updates. I'm taking it easy. I'm not doing the extremist way. I'm just.
But you are honestly doing a really good job, and I told you that the other night because I see how you do different things in the gym, whether it's a modification or you keep going.
I modify. You know me. If you know me.
But it's a good modification.
Fatima, but don't let her try to get away with a little.
She's doing good.
Too much modification. Not too much, because I know her.
Okay.
She's like, I'm just gonna take it. Like, that's not the exercise. We're doing this.
I just modified because my body. I had a C-section, everybody. So sometimes I'm like, ooh, okay, not that, okay,
not that, but this.
But this. So we're working on it. We'll have some results hopefully soon.
I'm proud of you. I didn't even know you was in the gym.
I just started, get my life a little.
I mean, summer is coming,
Yes. I mean, there's a whole plan. I'm just doing like the workout right now.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm gonna work out 3 times a week.
Yep.
Nice.
That's all I need. That's all I need. It's been 2 weeks. That's all I need for now.
And get myself, slowly back on life. But yeah, so thank you for that. Thank you for everything you do.
So welcome.
We appreciate you.
Yes.
We're excited to have you, and we'll have you back. That would be great. We can talk about my journey.
Yeah.
that sounds good.
That'll be a whole different episode, everybody. But today, as I share, we close with a phrase.
Yes.
So the 3 of us, I'll count us off, and then we'll say it. So
it's bigger than you.
Thank you so much for listening today. We're excited, and we hope that you follow us on
Instagram, True Print for Life, YouTube channel, also True Print for Life. And make sure that you share, like, watch our videos. Make sure that you follow us on all streaming platforms.